The webinar took place on July 15th and included Superintendent KATHLEEN BODIE, Assistant Superintendent Roderick McNeil Jr., and Arlington school principals. It was moderated by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator Jillian Harvey. The purpose of the webinar was to dissect recent disciplinary data, identify steps to address issues of disproportionality, and respond to questions from the community. Data reviewed by the school committee last month showed students of color have accounted for a disproportionately higher number of detentions than white students since 2017. At Arlington High School, for instance, where black students make up roughly 4% of the population, they received nearly 15% of detentions in 2017-2018, nearly 10% of detentions in 2018-2019, and 17% of detentions in 2019-2020. Hispanic students, who make up 6% of the population at the high school, received just over 13% of detentions in 2017-2018, nearly 12.5% of detentions in 2018-2019, and more than 12% of detentions in 2019-2020. White and Asian students tended to have a lower number of detentions in relation to their student populations.
The issue of discipline disproportionality has been ongoing discussion and focus in the Arlington Public Schools for many years. I want our students to know that we are listening. We acknowledge that discipline disparities remain a problem.
After the murder of George Floyd in May, 36-year-old data specialist REMY took to Instagram to explain why he walked away from his job at Arlington Public Schools 3 years ago.
And while compiling that data, what I found was that for the town of Arlington, that had at the time roughly 1,400 students enrolled, about 3% of those students were identified as Hispanic or Black or special education. And that 3% of students made up 80% of the detentions, expulsions, and suspensions throughout the district.
He says when he brought numbers reportedly alluding to racial disparities in student discipline, he says he was instructed to downplay his findings. The Instagram video, which to Remy's surprise exceeded 25,000 views, drew a very quick response from School Superintendent KATHLEEN BODIE, who says school leaders delved into the data, spending thousands of hours and tens of thousands of dollars to address such disparities. But you may recall, Remy's accusations don't stand alone. Several Arlington High School minority students made their voices heard at a black alum rally, which drew a crowd in excess of 300 people to Town Hall last month.
Understand that there's a system in place and understand that you perpetrate it. You're part of it. We need to change it. But first, just listen to the voices that are crying. Listen to the voices that are in pain. Listen to the voices that are angered. If we want to change, we need people in power to listen.
I would just tell them to reach out to people of color around them, hear their stories, listen to their testimonies, understand their pain and what they're feeling at the time. Now's not the time for it to become a black and white issue, but it's an issue for everyone to come together on. It's no longer that black people, because it involves them, they should be the only ones fighting. We need our white allies because they are people who can easily reach government. Sometimes they have higher standings, or the standings that they have can help us and help us achieve our goals.
ACMi News contacted school leaders to get their response to this story, but we did not hear back. But in this year, when so many events have given the nation pause to listen to allegations of racial inequity, educators say they are definitely striving to do better.